and you pull it up, and it stays because the capillary reaction stays in the straw until you take your thumb off. It's the same principle.
My question was, you carry both?
Oh yeah.
No, you don't carry the data.
This isn't carried. This is mounted in the boat.
Right.
Yeah.
You have it in the boat already,
Right.
in case you need more than just the minor.
As a matter of fact, if you're paddling, I'm going to say it correctly, but that's not really quite the right word. You're using your feet as you paddle to push with, and so you're always taking pressure off of that. It's called an inflation in the instructions. You're always taking pressure. It's always picking up a little bit of water. To the point where if you don't have any water in the boat, it's really annoying because it kind of goes not quite that loud, but it's going through all of those valves, just air.
Does anybody use the old school game pump?
I've seen it in there, but the problem is, do you really want to stop paddling? At that point, just pull over and dump the boat instead of sitting there. The only time I've seen a team effectively use that was Mark Simmons and Gary Robertson had some system where they'd be paddling along in their aluminum boat, and then they would stop, and Gary would sit all the way on the bow, and he would scoop like a madman for a few minutes, and then hop back in the seat. But I just think that that's so big and bulky and cheap. I've also seen people use bulb fuel pumps, like you use for transfer pump, for foot pumps. Probably pretty much a one-shot deal because it's not made for water, it's made for fuel, which has some lubricating properties. Did I take that too far?
Can you show us the pump one more time now that we're actually live streaming and they can hear? Thank God Kristen had a phone. Can you show us the Hobie?
I will.
No.
This
Okay.
is the Dayton. This is.
I don't know if you can actually see that. I'm sorry. I even have my glasses on. Oh my God, that's making me sick. Okay. Dayton submersible pump. That's a good pump. Okay.
That's in my mind the best electric pump out there. The foot pumps are Hubby foot pumps. Quite frankly, you can order them from Hubby. They're in South Africa. You will get them for next year's water safari.
Yeah, because they're in South Africa. Again, so sorry that we lost live stream audio, but we have it back now.
How many of you are planning to paddle in an aluminum boat? So, one of the things that I get asked pretty often is, what do I do to repair my boat when it gets a hole in it? Probably the most common, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Holly, because Holly has a fleet of these things she rents out. I think you got a couple left if somebody needs a boat?
Yeah, probably
Three is they're put together like aircraft wings. They're put together with rivets. And so quite frequently, a rivet gets just sheared off. And there's nothing, there are a lot of things more irritating. But pretty high on the list of irritating things is that little 3/16 hole looking like a fountain in the bottom of your boat. You can go through all the steps to tape it up and everything, but the thing I found, this is PC7 paste. You wad it up, it's like a part A and a part B. Wad it up, roll it up in your finger, cram it up into that little leaking mess, and it'll go off underwater, and it's sealed up for the remainder. So, pretty simple stuff to do that. If you have a bigger, you have something different that happens to them, other than they wreck them completely?
I've seen a couple zippers in aluminum.
Which brings us to, I should record that commercial and use it, the flex tape guy, because flex tape, and to a lesser degree zip tape, which they use on buildings when they're completing the envelope of sealing it up. The adhesive on this stuff is fantastic. Chris and I went on a trip on the Pecos River a few years ago and managed managed to bash the nose of the ABS boat in, and you know, the flex tape along with a couple of other random things to keep, because it doesn't have any, it's whatever you call scrape resistance, you know, it's gonna wear right through stuff like that. Man, it stuck like everything. You get a aluminum boat, just dry it off. I'll talk about that, drying them off here in a minute. But that flex, 99% of the stuff we used to do with fiberglass and epoxy, you can do with flex tape or zip tape. However, do your friendly boat repairman a favor. As soon as the race is over, get that stuff off of the boat, because it doesn't want to ever come off. I mean, I can't tell you how many grinding discs or sanding discs I clogged up just getting zip tape residue off of them. And sometimes it's to the point where I say words that I shouldn't say on TV.
Don't open it up.
I was going to put it over here.
I'll go find your secret stash. I know where, well, actually, I know where your secret stash is, so I'll just go get it.
It's not a very good secret, is it? Now, that said, if you're passing a carbon fiber or Kevlar boat, what I generally take with me is some very rough sandpaper. I take some gloves. I take some 5-minute epoxy, and I take 2 strips about 2 inches wide that are literally the length of the widest part of the boat. Because my theory is, and thank you Lord that I've never had to test this theory, is if I break the boat in half, I've got exactly enough material to put it back together once. That said, I've had to patch a few, but I've never had to actually put one back together during a race.
So, from what I'm hearing, we're not going to be penalized for hull modifications if we're fixing the boat, especially during the race, but even before it. So I've got a couple of rivets that have pulled through at this point.
And I'm not following your question, I'm sorry.
Because there's a rule that says you're not allowed to modify the hull of the aluminum boat to be not as electrical. But rivets and things like that are fair game.
I think when the race starts, it should probably have appropriate blind rivets in it.
What if they pull through?
If they pull through, you just need to put another one in. I mean,
Cool. Got it.
the appropriate rivet to use is actually the one that they use for like Airstream trailers. Because you don't have to have all the air gun and stuff like that. If I'm working on one at the house, you don't want to be there because it's really bad. Heat on everything. I don't know, do you have a problem?
No, I think that fits under repair versus modifying, would be like cutting the front of it off and making it square. I think that's the question. If that's what you
I mean, that'd be the same as if it had a big head and it put it to the aluminum welder and weld a patch on it. Hull modifications, really what that boils down to in aluminum tubes is, you see that we cut the bulkheads out and we put the V-braces in. But when you take the thwarts out, you, my God, better get the width right on the things you can replace it with if you don't use the original. Because what changes those things is pushing and pulling those thwarts in. That changes the whole shape, like makes it narrower. Someday when you're older, I'll tell you a big story about 1989 and the epoxy. This is important. 5-minute epoxy. It is not all created equal. Because you know what water resistant doesn't mean? It doesn't mean waterproof. So, as much as I love Gorilla Tape and all that stuff, Gorilla 5-minute epoxy is water resistant, and it will ultimately get to a point where you can just peel it off of whatever you did. DEVCON, is the only one that I found that is waterproof. And that, take it to the back, or read the labels yourself.
Are you gonna talk about drawing?
I don't have any because I used it to fill up a lighter. That's the thing. So, one of the things is how do you dry a boat off when it's been, you've been paddling for however long. So, there's some pretty dramatic pictures out there from what year was that?
Ashley, that was like
Jeanette, what year was that? You were
2016.
2016. Lighting it on fire.
And so you can take, surely some of y'all had cool childhoods where you did this sort of thing, where you like put lighter fluid on your hand and you lit it, and your hand's on fire, but it's not really on fire because it's the lighter fluid. Did any of y'all ever go to a Kiss concert? Same principle, right? So you put the lighter fluid on the boat, light it up, let it burn itself out, and it dries the boat in the process. Charlie went a little overboard with that particular one, I do believe. Now, there's two ways to go. I got my lighter in my pocket because little band might need a lighter. So you can take a lighter with you. I much prefer windproof, waterproof matches because I've more than once had a lighter that, for whatever reason got gunked up and wouldn't, the wheel wouldn't turn or wouldn't strike for whatever reason. It's like, that's no good, but I've never had these windproof, waterproof matches not fire up. Any questions about that? Anybody want to go put lighter fluid on their hand after this?
No, but you could show it for video. It would be entertaining after what we missed earlier.
We could do it with tequila.
No.
Jay, where do you house the lighter fluid? Do you have a smaller container for lighter fluid?
I literally take the little Ronson bottle, like you would fill a Zippo up with, and put it in Sealamil. I think Chris has probably talked about this.
I don't.
This particular has been, Sealamil so long it may be rotted inside of there. But the thing is, you have to be careful with the things that are liquid, that you don't pull a full vacuum on it because it'll just explode it.
So do a light seal.
Yeah, my light seal. Or don't take
Don't
any air.
vacuum it. Maybe vacuum it a little bit and then just hit
Yeah,
seal.
I
fast.
usually I'll vacuum just a smidge and then.
It's not my area of expertise.
Y'all know what
It's not
seal meal
like a
is,
seal.
right? Everybody knows what those are?
No.
A seal meal?
The food savers.
Yeah, food savers, another name for them.
And just like he showed the hat, it's a wonderful way to put a backup hat, backup glasses.
Yeah, anything that you may need to use at some point, but you hope you don't have to use at some point, but you don't want it to be so sealed up that you can't get it in. We do our spray skirt like that because, it takes, when the spray skirt is just loose in the bag it comes in, it's about the size of a
Jay, you might want to explain what a spray skirt is.
Oh, have we talked about spray skirts at all? No. I'll let Holly talk about that then. But we vacuum seal ours.
Yes.
See, what else do I have here? Oh, snake bite kit. So,
You show the camera too.
this is my snake bite kit. I have never used it on a snake bite. I've never used it on a bee sting. I've never used it at all. But it's done about 6 water safaris at this point, so I've always had my snake bite kit. If you've got one of those cute little rubber cup things like we had back in the Cub Scouts back in the 70s, that's fine too. If you want to tell me that a rubber band and ice is your plan for a snake bite, rock on. Just have a plan. That's really what it all boils down to. Same thing, first aid kit is required. Is it still required? Which is kind of random since you can get all of that material, but truth of the matter is you're only going to see your team for very, very limited part of the whole thing. I don't care if you tell me your first aid kit is a Band-Aid. You probably should have taken something a little more than that. What?
The ridge crest.
I'll get to that. Now, one of the things is all the food stuff. I know that Holly and Morgan talked a lot about liquid food. I think Jeanette did too. You don't like liquid food?
No, I 90% liquid, yeah. That wasn't my area to cover.
I've got to eat a little bit. I mean, and by eat, I mean I need to chew on it. And so I've always carried a knife at the end of a cord that I can get to because it can open, or you can take scissors. You know, these particular knives are really, really sharp. These are, you know, I use these for skinning deer, or gutting deer. But I will tell you a story about string. This is, I'm going to use the wrong, Dyneema string. You don't have to use Dyneema string, I just happen to have a bunch of it laying around. And in the 2005 Texas Water Safari, I was on a team that probably should have won the race. We didn't. And at Thompson's Island, you know, every bit of 1.5 miles or 2 miles into the race is not even 2 miles. As we made that portage we talked about earlier today, one of my partners took a flying leap into the boat, stomped on the rudder pedal, and bent it backwards like the only thing I don't have a backup for in the whole wide world is that hinge that rudder pedal attaches to. And I tied that rudder pedal to my foot and with my little piece of Dyneema string and drove that boat for the other 258 miles like that. And it was pretty crampy. Let's see, talked about that. Somebody want to ask, that's the best GPS unit to use, Jay? I'm going to get that question at some point. I don't know. The one you can afford that's waterproof, that's the best one to use, and with the most battery life. This is not the one with the most battery life. So I have to make its own little battery pack, so it makes it through the safari. And
Which one do you use, Holly?
A Timex watch.
Timex watch?
yeah, and here's the thing. People have gotten so carried away with what they eat. I mean, shoot, man, did it again. I covered myself bad. My watch probably has more stuff than they had on the Apollo missions to the moon at this point. I mean, it's got a GPS map in it. You know, tell you what my heart rate is. It does stuff. I mean, it does everything but wipe my butt for me, kind of thing. And I mean, I know where I am all the time because I just have to, you know, go to the little map screen. But every one of those things ultimately fails at the most inconvenient time. The battery dies, you know, and somehow gets flooded, you know, and it's in the electronics go. So yeah, you need to, if at all possible, see as much of the course and know as much of the course as possible. We've talked about the cuts and the jams and everything. There were a number of years where Paddock and I literally every Thursday night we left work and we paddled the jams. And so now we pretty much know it backwards and forwards and flooded and unflooded and whatnot.
And I'll give y'all a tip on, if you go down there, you only have, you know, one chance to go see the Scout the Jam. What I did with my son is I was like, you're going to name this point because it's very distinct. And he thought, he's like, Mom, you're being ridiculous. So we named it, and then he had to write out like a handwritten map because there was one spot where it opens and there's like 4 ways to go. And I had him do that because it's stuck in his head. And when we got there in the race, I'm second guessing myself because I have
these things were all up on the wall, and they had dry erase markers, and I would go down the river. It's like it was 15 minutes from here, so this must be here. And I would write that on that map. The only difference today is I can put all those pins in Google Earth and save them, and I can mark them on my GPS as I go, but it's the same thing. I'm still looking at maps to know where I'm going, because it doesn't have an electronic. This doesn't have electronics that can fail you. It's got some other stuff that can fail you, but it's not the electronics. And what was the most extreme thing I remember was a team had paddled down, and they had gotten so reliant, and this was a pretty fast team, and they paddled down, and it was like supposed to be, 10.8 miles or whatever from this point to that point. And they got to about 11.4 miles and decided that the river had obviously ended and they needed to turn around and go back the other way because they had gotten reliant on this information.
They freaked themselves out and they didn't finish that year.
I think a Leatherman, pick your favorite one. Make sure it's oiled up no matter how waterproof or how rust proof they tell you it is, because there's enough gun among it out there that it's going to get nasty. I feel like I'm missing something with that stuff there. We talked about, Jeanette talked about using film canisters. These are small Nalgene bottles. That is what I've been using since I couldn't get film canisters anymore. It's kind of a fun game to go through your drugs about, I don't know,
Before the prelim.
what's that?
Before the prelim.
Yeah, somewhere around the prelim, and just see what you didn't take last year, and and if you're that so inclined, just go ahead and take it then, see what it would have been. Seat pattern is every seat is different. Now, and by that I mean the one that you're currently sitting on, not the one in the boat. They're tractor seats, they call them, and they're high back seats. And then there's other kinds of high back seats, and other tractor seats. One size does not fit all. The high back seat, also known as a tree-pole seat, in my mind is the most comfortable thing that was ever put into a canoe. I don't think so. That said, I can think of about one lady who thinks they're comfortable because I don't have any hips. I mean, it's just a fact, right? So what's comfortable for me is not comfortable for you. We used to all use the tractor seats, which the ladies seem to still like. I think you ended up changing like all those tree-pole seats out except for one, right? Yours. The padding is different, but just like we talked about food earlier, you don't try your padding out for the first time during the water safari because it'll be wrong. But if you tried it out starting about next month sometime, and do a couple of long runs, you'll find out where the hot spots are and what needs to be adjusted and not adjusted. Oh. This is Ridge Rest foam. It's actually, I think, made by Thermarest now. Yes, Thermarest Ridge Rest. Crazy, huh?
Yeah, here, show the camera. Thermarest Ridge Rest. Here we go. Oh my God.
Now, that said, this is the one I use for my base layer. There's one that's green that has kind of a space blanket silvery finish on it. A little bit softer, a little bit better for the top layer, but it's not going to last quite as long. Other things that are, there are probably as many combinations of seat foam as there are seats in the water safari. I know some people like to use the open cell foam and cover it up with this to where it gets real squishy. I find that that creates its own set of issues for me, but there are guys who swear by it, and as opposed to those that swear by it. Any questions on it? Oh, okay.
So you cut that up and basically take it out of your receipt or
We use contact cement of some sort or another. But yeah, basically, you want it to conform to the seat. And what you're trying to do, it's not, this is one of those places where it gets confusing too, because it's not so much that you're padding the seat in terms of cushioning, you're padding the seat to keep your butt from sliding around in the seat. I mean, you don't want to sit on, you want some degree of cushioning, but the real challenge is to get it to where you're not slipping and sliding, which creates all those blisters that we were talking about earlier. Friction is a bad thing in more ways than one. I mean, friction on your body or somewhere, you know, your armpits is bad. You know, friction on your butt through all your shorts and tights is bad. It's interesting, Jeanette said that she doesn't wear shorts over the top of them, and that's fine. I wear shorts over the top because that's the one place I want something slipping is between those shorts and the tights, as opposed to slipping on the seat somewhere.
Well, and that's something to pay attention to when you're picking the material that you are gonna put as your top layer on your seat. The worst burn and rub, and it actually created through a layer of skin, was because I used that thicker white foam, and I couldn't, with my paddling motion, I didn't shift on it, so my tights stayed in one spot and my butt moved back and forth. So you got to have, as he said, not a whole lot of slip, but you got to be able to slide just a little bit. You don't want to be stuck to whatever you're sitting on, because your butt will be moving inside of there.
I did forget to give my normal admonition about being very careful with the tights, with the access cut into them. A very good friend of mine, who actually won the mixed division several times, had her easy access tights on. And she was out gardening one day, not realizing which tights she had on, and had been bent over the garden quite all day long. And somewhere around lunchtime, she went inside and realized that she had just been giving her whole neighborhood a show. But it was in Austin, so I suppose that's not all that weird of a thing. Just saying. Paddles. So, probably most of you will be single blade paddling. At this point, the most commonly used paddles are Zabarels. These are all lightweights. I suggest that you not invest in a lightweight at this point. A Power Surge medium will do you just fine. It probably weighs an entire ounce more, if even that much, and it costs you about $75 less. You know, so that's the way to go. You get the blades in different widths. This one's 8 1/4. This one's 7 3/4. So you can see. You're going to have somebody tell you need a wide paddle. You're going to have somebody tell you need a narrow paddle. And I would say go with the standard at this point in your career and work it up and down from there. You know, if you really like it, you want to do it again, then buy your second and third and fourth and fifth and sixth. But Zabarel racing equipment, I think TG Delivery still is a dealer for them and is a sponsor of the Water Safari, so that would be my suggested go-to for them. This is a zone paddle. Unfortunately, they've gotten very hard to get a hold of. In my mind, it was an improvement, but the guy who was making them was like literally the mad scientist kind of guy in his garage, and just say, if you see a zone paddle for sale, call me, and I'll buy it, and, you know, I'll even give you a finder's fee if you want. I'd even give it to you if you didn't. If you're someone who's paddling, probably for you guys it'd be solo at this point, and you're gonna double blade, epic doubles tend to be the most common here. That doesn't mean it's the only one or the best one, it just happens to be what's most common. I think Braca, B-R-A-C-A, is another one that there are quite a few of. Can you think of any I'm missing here? And basically for what we're doing with the ultra distance like this, you want to get the smallest blade possible. You know, get one of those big old honking blades, and man, you'll feel like you're flying until about the time you get to the end of Spring Lake. And then it's just painful. That said, I don't know who this belongs to.
That is leftovers.
Oh, this is leftover stuff for the largest part. This would not be my first choice. That said, somebody's going to show up at the race with something like this. And I'm here to tell you, the equipment is not what gets you to the finish. Because if equipment made you win, I would probably have 20 wins instead of one, you know, kind of thing. Because you've got to be able to use the equipment. Ooh, nearby lightning. Should check this stuff out before getting into it.
Mainly, this is a demonstration of, make sure you clean up your stuff and have your name on everything.
Correct. That's true. I mean, kudos to all of you who brought your chairs today, but how many of you have your names on the back of them?
Me.
Of course you do, Jenny. Of course.
Just being, like if you are out paddling, you flip, and your paddle comes out, and if you don't have your name on it, you're probably not ever going to find. Oh yeah. But multiple people get their paddles back because they do have their name and phone number on it. So label your items.
You see on my paddle that, go ahead.
Just a quick question, if we're going up the river and we find a paddle, can you pick it up and throw it off at the next checkpoint? That doesn't get anybody DQ'd or they can pick it up later or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, this just like picking up trash at that point. I mean, now what you can't do at the checkpoint for sure is you can't say, oh, hey, look, Timmy, I found your paddle, here you go, because that's giving them assistance. Now, one thing I wanted to point out is, you see this tape on my paddles, they got the gray tape because I was always the oldest in both the last few years. I got gray for my color. See what I did there? You can feel me, don't you? But the reflective tape is funny. For years, I've mentioned Chris Pack several times. One of my oldest friends in canoe racing. For years, he thought I was doing that for decoration. And so he was going along, turned over at night, lost his paddle. It's like he's fussing about it. And I was like, well, why didn't you shine a light on it and hit the reflective tape? And he could see that, you know, after several years of racing, that dawned on him that reflective tape was so he could find it in the dark, not for decoration. Now, all that to say, the next time we raced, he showed up and it looked like a construction zone all attached to the paddle. Probably overdid it a little bit, but the point is, you're going to lose something in the dark. You know, the one thing that there's no way to leave attached to the boat is your paddle. Reflective tape is a wonderful, wonderful thing.
We had someone lose a paddle last week on the Colorado, and if you write your name and phone number on it, it's a lot less easy to steal and claim as your own. So
unless you have acetone in the rack.
That's true, but good river karma bespeaks that if you find a paddle and it's got someone's name and number on it, return it for, you know, good juju.
You have my paddle?
Reflective tape. Just so, because we're
above the shaft, not at the top where it's gonna be in
Yeah, that's
your headlight.
Yeah.
We're reminding you.
And that was part of what I was talking about, you know, when it started looking like a construction zone. I mean, there was tape up here. And, you know, so what happens is, you know, that's hitting, you know, any light in the boat is reflecting on that. So now if you're driving the boat, you've got something reflecting in your face every time it goes forward. Very much good point, you know, at the bottom. It's obviously different with the double blades because they're slinging up and down.
I got a question. If Fred is up there in front of me and he drops, his paddle falls out, and I come up behind it and I say, oh, that's Fred's paddle, and I see him in the race, I can't give it to him?
I don't want to hear about it.
But you can also keep it if you find it and he's not around or whatever, and somebody use it. It's an extra paddle for you and then deliver it to the end.
I think probably, and as Penny put it, good river karma. If I had found Fred's paddle, depending on which Fred, next time I got past Fred, I might lose Fred's paddle.
Accidentally. It might fall
Yeah,
accidentally
it might
into
fall
the
out
river.
of the kind of thing.
Accidentally.
I mean, good things happen to bad people.
But you can use stuff you find.
Right. Yeah, you can, if you find a paddle and, you know, you're down to one,
God bless them, that rowboat, the first year the rowboat entered a few years back, they had 2 sets of the rowing things, they had 2 more paddles, broke them all by the time they got to Staples, so.
that's a bummer.
But definitely want that extra paddle, right?
You know, then you can get into the whole thing about how many spares do you need. You know, if you're in a 6-man boat, you don't take, I mean, and I know you're not, but just to put it in perspective, you don't take 6 double blade extras. You know, you don't have 12 double blades in the boat. You don't have, you know, 12 single blade paddles in the boat. You've got to come to the happy medium. In tandem boat, it's different. You know, you generally, if you're double blading, you have 2 double blades, 1 extra double blade, and everybody's got an extra single. Any questions at this point? Because I need to go blow my nose really bad and I can use a break right now. Or Kristen or Jeanette can keep you entertained for a minute.
Take a quick break and then I think we're gonna.
I think we're getting pretty close since the questions are getting slow, but I've got to stop for a minute.
Okay, so unless there's any questions, we're gonna take a quick lull. I did notice you had a couple of the novice lady finishers here, if you needed them. So I am so sorry again for the issue with the sound earlier. If I can find a way to share that information, I will. But again, my apologies. We will come back live in just a few minutes, and I swear to God there'll be audio this time. Thanks so much. We intend to have one more short segment after this 5-minute break.